be discussing on thematic Sukuk, bridging sustainability and Islamic capital markets for a resilient future. So today we are honored to have with us Ms. Ismah Karabulut, Director Investment Banking and Investor Relations, Türkiye Emlak Katılım Bankası. I hope I pronounced it well. She brings both expertise in Islamic capital markets and sustainable finance. With her deep insights, we hope to explore how thematic Sukuk are shaping the future of responsible investment. Inshallah, we will begin our understanding. So in recent years, we have seen a growing divergence of Sharia conversion Sukuk, whether the green, social, or sustainability linked, are emerging as a powerful instrument to finance projects that not only comply with Sharia principles, but also contribute to the environmental and social well-being. So, Ms. Ismah, to begin, could you provide us with an overview of thematic Sukuk and how they are positioned within the broader landscape of Islamic capital market?
Okay. Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak to all of you. As we approach the final days of this blessed month, I also wish you a happy and blessed Eid in advance. And I'm honored to be part of the IF Reflection series and grateful for the kind invitation to join this insightful platform. And before the thematic Sukuk transactions and subtractions, by the way, I'm hearing my voice. There is a voice problem, I think, because I am listening to myself. Maybe if you close.
I think it's okay now.
Okay.
Give me a second.
Okay. Let me give you a brief information about the link between Islamic finance and ESG principles. Today, when we look at the total asset size of global Islamic finance markets, it's about $3.2 trillion at the end of 2022, and it is projected to reach $5 trillion by 2025. When we look at the chart, approximately 69% comes from Islamic banks, 25% belongs to Sukuk transactions, and the rest comes from Islamic funds and Tekaful, Islamic insurance. And this offers a tremendous potential in supporting climate change. Why? Because similar to sustainable finance, Islamic finance aims to promote and enhance the sustainable development through the principles of fairness, equality, and ethics. I can say that there has always been great overlap between Sharia-compliant finance and ESG principles. For instance, some principles of Islamic finance are aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals. For instance, directing funds to the real economy, the promotion of risk and profit sharing, and the avoidance of excessive risk and speculation. For instance, green, sustainable social Sukuk transactions are innovative models of this synergy. And we believe that Islamic finance has been offering much of ESG sector requires for many years. When you go back to 2015, the United Nations came up with a list of exclusions that were similar to those from Islamic finance 1,400 years ago. Back then, it was just called finance, just finance. And we should look at the big picture in Islamic finance because it has a rich structure and robust set of values. In addition, Islamic finance is structured in a way that it encourages long-term investments rather than making money. And moreover, we can observe some traditional forms of Islamic social financing, including zakat, sadaqah, waqf. These are very important issues. And of course, it is very crucial to assess the level of social impact contributed by Islamic finance But there is a need for a development of measurement tools to see the big effect of Islamic finance all over the world. According to the Islamic Development Bank's estimation, the potential zakat amount is around $600 billion annually. It is too big to ignore. It is too big to ignore. And we can say that Islam teaches us that we are responsible for protecting nature and using resources wisely. And when we disrupt the balance of the earth and we face the consequences of our own actions, and when we look at the Quran, Quran reminds us of this in Surah Ar-Rum. According to the Surah Ar-Rum, corruption has spread on land and sea because of what people have done, so that they may taste of some their deeds and perhaps return to the right path. This verse highlights the direct link between human actions and environmental harm. It's a powerful reminder that sustainability is not just a modern concept, it has always been a part of Islamic values. When we look at the similarities between ESG and universal values of Sharia, of course, there are some common characteristics. For instance, screening process. As you know, prohibition of investments in certain industries such as tobacco, alcohol, pork, weapons, gambling. These activities are deemed unlawful, haram. And Sharia-compliant products are screened to avoid these industries. It is closely parallel ESG investing. Like investors in Sharia-compliant products, investors using ESG investing strategies avoid certain industries as the same as Sharia-compliant products. This is very important character. Another field is social finance. Zakat, fundamentally, it is a fundamentally tax on wealth in order to circulate in the economy. Sadaqah is not a charity, but also we could use it today in social blended finance. And today, ESG has to be integrated in financial sector. And financing needs for sustainability are very, very important. And it is responsibility for all of us as human. And moreover, ESG is an opportunity, but of course, it has some potential risks. I can say that. And the development of sustainable green sukuk issuances in Islamic capital markets is one of the most important financing tools for combating climate change all over the world. Before thematic sukuk definition, let me give you brief information about sukuk. Sukuk is an Islamic certificate similar to conventional bond, but it has to comply with Sharia Islamic religious law. Having an underlying asset is the basis of sukuk, whereas conventional bond is based on interest. And sukuk is interest-free, of course. Sukuk is not debt instruments like conventional bonds. Sukuk indicates an ownership of an asset, and it is not guaranteed by the issuer, and it is issued within the framework of Islamic banking principles. And sukuk holders are affected by their share from the performance of the core assets or projects. And what about thematic sukuk? Thematic sukuk is a combination of issuing traditional sukuk with incorporation of financing specific investment themes such as climate change, health, food, education, access to financial services. It targets specific sustainable development goals through investing. As you know, in September 2015, United Nations General Assembly set 17 sustainable development goals and 169 specific targets to be achieved, a better and more sustainable future for all of us by 2030. These goals aim to solve the big problems like poverty, inequality, climate change, peace, justice. To be honest, however, it is unfortunate truth that it needs to be highlighted. While Israel is committed by genocide in Gaza in front of the world, the United Nations hasn't been able to stop it. This is another paradox. Moreover, the silence of the Muslim world on this matter is a great shame, unfortunately. Anyway, today, thematic sukuk issuances can be executed under different themes around the world, but sustainable sukuk is a sort of combination of green, social, blue sukuk transactions. And we can say that all of the thematic sukuk structures are executed under the umbrella of sustainable sukuk. The most important thing that the use of the proceeds determines the type of the theme sukuk structure. For instance, if the use of the proceeds is focused on emission reduction, such as renewable energy, energy efficiency, pollution prevention and control, clean transportation, this theme is green sukuk. Or if it is issued to find resources for marine-related projects, such as sewage treatment, ocean conservation, it is blue sukuk. As for social sukuk, it is issued to specifically fund projects that have a positive social impact on society. For instance, affordable basic infrastructure, affordable housing, employment generation. This theme is social sukuk. Sustainable sukuk is issued. It's a combination of blue, social, and green sukuk structures, and we can observe SDG-linked sukuk in the market. This SDG-linked sukuk is issued based on the issuer's commitments to meeting ESG objectives. Issuers can use the sukuk proceeds for general purposes, but they are required to achieve some targets. That's why issuer has to set up some targets for ESG objectives of the companies. And another example is transition sukuk. Transition sukuk is issued to fund a firm transition towards a reduced environmental impact or to reduce their carbon emissions. As of today, many institutional investors are shifting towards responsible investing by incorporating ESG components within their investment strategies. And this is helping to drive demand for ESG financial products. Issuers can reach a wider investor base, including Sharia-compliant investors, by issuing green sustainable transactions. Because when you issue a traditional sukuk, you can access to Islamic funds plus conventional funds, but in a thematic sukuk transaction, you can access to not only Islamic funds, not only traditional funds, but also you can access to thematic funds. And also we can observe a greenium. What is greenium? It's you can issue your thematic sukuk cheaper than traditional sukuk. There is the all-in cost is a bit cheaper than traditional sukuk actually. As of today, delivering the SDG targets is estimated to require an annual $5 trillion to $7 trillion in funding from both the public and the private sector. However, a major challenge for many countries is that public funding resources, especially in developing countries, the estimated ratio, the annual, we require $2.5 trillion. I mean, developing countries are faced with $2.5 trillion annual funding gap. Of course, Islamic finance continues to show strong growth. in 2024, issuers raised $250 billion through Sukuk. There is an increase approximately 16% when we compare to last year. And ESG market, Sukuk market, is growing fast. Last year, issues of ESG Sukuk grew by 14%. It's about $15 billion. It makes up 6% of all overall Sukuk transactions and 1% of the total debt finance raised all over the world. I can say briefly, actually. By the way, do you hear me? There's no any connection problem, right? I couldn't hear you, but... Oh, okay, I think you're hearing me. I can continue if you wish. Okay. And of course, as I mentioned, there is a huge appetite for thematic Sukuk issuances in line with institutions, investors' commitments in sustainable growth all over the world. Issuers adopt and implement some international principles for their thematic Sukuk transactions. In order to ensure... Yeah, of course, please.
Okay, I think it has been a very, very insightful sharing that you have shared, Sister Isma. But is there any thematic Sukuk integrated with Wakaf or other Islamic social finance instruments that can relate to fulfilling the SDGs goals and to maximize the social impact?
You are asking about Wakaf-based, right?
Yeah.
In Turkey, actually, there is no any transaction on that. But if you wish, I can share my experiences on green Sukuk transactions in Turkey.
Sure.
Yeah, actually, as we are a participation bank, we issued the first green Sukuk transaction in Turkey in 2021. Actually, when we look at Turkey, with the ratification of the Paris Agreement, Turkey's combat against climate change gained new momentum, and Turkey continues its studies on sustainable finance in banking, capital markets, and Islamic finance as well. The development of sustainable Sukuk issuances in Islamic capital markets is one of the most important financing tools for combating climate change. We believe that. That's why, as we are a participation bank, we wanted to test and initiate green Sukuk issuance in Turkey. And we issued Turkey's first ever green Sukuk al-Mudaraba based on labor and capital partnership. At this time, there were no any regulations, no any commonics regarding green thematic transactions. By the way, I'm hearing a voice. Okay. Before the green Sukuk transaction, we prepare a sustainable finance framework in line with international standards. These standards is generally ICMA principles, International Capital Markets Association's Green Bond principles. And we received a second party opinion from a third party regarding the confirmation of the sustainable finance framework in line with international standards. In this Sukuk structure, as I mentioned, we use Sukuk al-Mudaraba, and the green Sukuk proceeds were transferred to a private fund pool to finance some green Murabaha projects. And the profits generated by the pool was shared between Emlak Participation Bank and also Sukuk holders, according to the predetermined sharing ratio every month in the periodic return payment dates. This Sukuk structure differs from other fixed income Sukuk structure. Why? Because of due to floating returns. Because when we look at local and international Sukuk transactions, the profit rate is fixed. But this Sukuk transaction profit rate is floating. because the profit generated by the pool was shared between the parties according to a ratio. In addition, the maturity in this sukuk transaction is 1 year. Actually, when we look at Turkey experiences, the local sukuk issuances general maturity is around 3 or 4 months. Unfortunately, it's very short. Why? Because of volatility in exchange rates, inflation rates in Turkey. Investors want to invest in short-term sukuk transactions. That's why we try to extend the sukuk maturity in the sukuk structure, and the maturity was 1 year in the sukuk structure, not 3 or 4 months. Why? Because of floating rates. And of course, when we look at, we extend the maturity of Turkish lira funding via green sukuk issues. It was a positive opportunity for us. Of course, there were some challenges for us, and we faced some barriers about transaction. Why? Because in a thematic sukuk transaction, there are some additional costs, such as second party opinion, verification, certification, etc. I mean, these additional costs of external review and other costs increase our all-in costs. Moreover, we wanted to reach green funds by issuing green sukuk in domestic markets, but we observed that there is a shortage of ESG-focused investors in Turkey, and also there is an uncertainty over any pricing advantage. Challenge: accessing climate funds make it difficult to access dedicated climate funds resources in Turkey. It was a barrier for us. The first regulations about green sukuk and bond in Turkey starts with the introduction of the Green Sustainable Bond and Sukuk Guideline in 2022, sorry. And regulators in Turkey made 50 discount on some operational expenses, such as board fees, listing fees. But to be honest, these incentives are not enough for the markets, because these incentives don't cover the costs paid to third parties. And we need much more incentives to make the capital markets more green in Turkey, not only in Turkey, but also other countries as well. To make green, sustainable sukuk market a more attractive financing option, policymakers should encourage the development of sustainable finance in terms of creating incentives for both investors and issuers. Tax incentives, exemptions, and any other discount on fees related to green sukuk transaction can promote the market. As you know, as I mentioned, there are additional costs in green sukuk transactions. All of them increase our all-in cost. Of course, we can see some good examples regarding incentives in Malaysia, Indonesia, Hong Kong, etc. And there are green bond and sukuk subsidy schemes covering the external review up to a maximum amount. These incentives help to reduce the cost barrier for issuers to make the market more green, actually. This is a very innovative sukuk structure and the first green sukuk structure in Turkey. Yeah.
But Ms. Isma, while you're talking about how tax incentive is important and everything else, so what type of investor currently is interested in thematic sukuk? And how do we encourage more investors to actually invest? Because it's for a good cause, right? This thematic sukuk is for social, it's for green matters. So what type of investors actually do we have in thematic sukuk industry?
Okay. When we look at the diversification of the sukuk investors in Turkey, especially in the local market, approximately 80% of the investors are portfolio management companies, insurance funds, and other Islamic funds. And actually, there is a lack of ESG funds in Turkey. That's why when I issue a green or thematic sukuk, we couldn't see a huge appetite for this sukuk transaction because there's a shortage of ESG funds in Turkey. But it's not a problem in Turkey, but also in GCC region. We can observe the pricing advantage, especially in international sukuk transaction. Why? Because especially in European countries, many portfolio management companies make commitments regarding investing thematic tools such as green sukuk, green bond, and any other instruments. That's why when you go to the market with a thematic sukuk or green bond, you are oversubscribed because of this thematic ESG sukuk funds. But in local size, unfortunately, in Turkey, there is a shortage or lack of ESG funds in Turkey, and we couldn't see any pricing advantage in Turkey. I can say that briefly. But
Is there? I'm sorry, Sister Isma. But is that because of the lack of reporting, or is there a sentiment of greenwashing that we tend to have less confidence from the investor?
actually, we need incentives to push the markets. If you use tax incentives for both investors and also portfolio management companies, it's very good option actually, because when you issue a green sukuk, you have lots of responsibilities. You have to make report all of the funds and also fund allocation and impact reports, and also there's a recording in thematic sukuk transaction. There's a lots of complex structure and reporting mechanism. That's why if we want to issue a thematic sukuk, there should be a pricing advantage, but we couldn't see this advantage in Turkey. If there are some incentives to push the market in Turkey, why not? I can issue, but unfortunately, we couldn't see these incentives enough in the market.
Is it the same with if it was in the bond market, because sukuk is in the Islamic finance? If it's in the conventional banking, is there any such issue happening the same for this incentive for green bond and anything? Is it the same, or is
in capital market, both of them we couldn't observe any advantage, but of course, there's when we look at the Islamic banks and also other conventional banks, there are some syndication loans, and for instance, the last year, all of the banks in Turkey issued thematic syndicated sustainability, social and green syndicated loans, all of them, because many development banks, international investment and development banks, say that I will finance the thematic projects, and that's why in Turkey many of banks, conventional participation banks, these are trying to access these climate dedicated funds. That's why in terms of project financing and syndication loans, of course, we can see a huge appetite because of some commitments of these institutions. But in capital markets, I couldn't see the same advantage actually.
do you think it's actually the policymakers, the governments needs to play a vital role here to support this thematic sukuk initiative too?
Exactly.
How about financial institutions? How about within banks?
Can you again? I couldn't. Could you please again? I couldn't hear you. I couldn't hear you now. Do you hear me? There's a connection problem, I think.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't hear you. Sorry. Do you hear me? I think there's a connection problem, but couldn't get the question. Shima, do you hear me? Ashira,
Hear
do you
me?
hear me? Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay,
Yes,
I'm
yes,
so
I can
sorry.
hear
My
you.
apologies.
No problem.
My apologies for the technical issues. All right, my question was just now, how is between banking institutions are supporting this thematic suku? Is there any encouragement between banks or is actually a work in silo?
Actually, if you want to issue a thematic green sustainable security transaction, it is not as easy because, for instance, when we look at our bank, and we last year, actually 2 years ago, we established a sustainability service within the bank, and we established some committees regarding sustainability, all of the departments. And we publish a sustainability strategy and sustainable finance framework because it is a very important issue. When you go to the market, you need to show yourself and you have to set some targets, ambitious targets regarding reaching sustainable development goals. That's why these targets are very important to access the ESG focused investors in the market. I can say that. And many participation banks, by the way, we use the terminology of participation banking instead of Islamic banking in Turkey. There are 9 participation banks operating in Turkey over 35 years, and many of them now trying to change all of the process in line with their sustainable strategy. And this is very important change in Islamic capital markets and Islamic banks. I can say that shortly.
So do you work with global banks to encourage awareness and enhance education about this thematic suku?
Of course, of course. When we first issued the green security transaction, we received an award regarding this, and we educated lots of people regarding awareness of this sector, and we believe that if we spread this knowledge in the market, we will enhance and develop this market together with policymakers, with participation banks and regulators.
So if one
Players, please.
Okay, please, fine.
Please go ahead. No problem.
So because we're having this problem about people to encourage people to start investing in thematic suku. So what is the initiative now from the participation bank to call out the investors like come invest in our thematic suku is for a good cause. So what is the initiative there?
What is the initiative? Actually, many participation banks trying to change their funding system, especially we are trying to focus on sustainable projects because when we look at all of the developments in international area, and many international investors and development banks focus on sustainable projects. That's why, in order to access the dedicated ESG funds, we are trying to issue these green sukuk or thematic sukuk transactions, although there is no any pricing advantage in local market, because we are trying to increase reputation of the banks. Reputation is very important, and awareness is very important to access these ESG funds. Actually, we believe that we will see the pricing advantage, I mean greenium pricing advantage, in a few years, inshallah. I can say that shortly.
So in short, Sister Isma, what are the key drivers now that we need to encourage to scale up the issuance of thematic sukuk, to scale up the involvement of investing in the thematic sukuk in emerging markets?
In emerging markets?
Yeah. So as a whole, yeah. So what do we need to do? What are the key drivers need to do to scale up this attract involvement?
Yeah,
so
when we look at the emerging markets, especially in GCC market, we can observe that, especially, sukuk is a complex structure. ESG sukuk is much more complex than traditional sukuk. That's why, especially in developing countries and ESG GCC countries, there is a need on education. Because when we look at the European countries, many portfolio management countries and many investors are very well educated in the different formats of ESG sector. But in GCC countries, we couldn't observe this awareness and interest. That's why, firstly, education and awareness is very important in order to understand the working mechanism of thematic sukuk, and then many companies in emerging markets need to set a sustainability strategy and need to publish a sustainable finance framework for their thematic financing. These are very important for the first step to enter this world. I can say that. Of course, as I mentioned, policymakers and also investors and also many Islamic funds, in many Islamic funds and Islamic banks need to come together in order to push the sukuk markets with incentives, with regulations, and any other steps. These are very important for pushing the green sukuk markets in emerging markets.
Okay. So when you say that all policymakers, regulators need to come in, so what can the community, the investors, would like to do? Because investors can play the role to escalate and then to enhance, improve this thematic sukuk issuance or whatever not. So what can layman people do for us to, support this thematic sukuk and make it bigger and beyond within the Islamic finance and Islamic capital market? Is there anything that we can do?
In terms of investors' perspective, in terms of investors' perspective, actually, as I mentioned, especially in European sites, there are lots of commitments regarding investing in thematic funds. But in developing countries, GCC, we couldn't see these ESG-focused investors. Yes, there's a commitment. That's why they have to make some reports about the managing their funds. But especially in developing countries, incentives, especially tax incentives, are very important in order to make an awareness in the markets, because the new generation is not only focused on making money, but also environmental benefits of their investments. That's why these are very important, especially in terms of incentives. I can say that.
All right, great. Ismail. It has been a very comprehensive sharing about all this ESG thematic support and what can they actually do to develop the community itself. But of course, in the time being now, we need a lot more attraction from the investors and the support from the regulators themselves. So there is one question from the audience. Is there a premium for thematic sukuks?
Is there any?
Is there a premium for thematic sukuks?
Premium.
Yeah.
Premium. Okay. Do you mean pricing advantage, right? Premium.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's pricing advantage, of course, in especially international sukuk transactions, thematic sukuk transaction, we can observe this pricing advantage because, as I mentioned, some thematic funds, especially located in European sites, they focus on this thematic sukuk transaction. When you issue a thematic sukuk, there is an oversubscription, and that's why if there is an oversubscription, you can compress the pricing level in a sukuk transaction. Of course, we can observe a pricing advantage, but it is not much more than other pricing advantage. It's around 50 basis points. As I observe 50 basis points in international sukuk transaction as a pricing advantage.
Right. Under the thematic sukuk structure, what would be the best underlying structure that has been issued in Turkey, and also if you have any idea in other countries? Is there any?
You are asking about sukuk structures?
What is the underlying structure?
Underlying structure, okay. Actually, when we look at sukuk structure, there are two types of sukuk structure. One of them is asset-backed sukuk. In this sukuk structure, there's a real sale of underlying asset to SPV. And I mean, the assets are off the balance sheet of the company. In asset-based sukuk structure, the assets don't transfer to SPV, they stay on the balance sheet of the originator. Investors have beneficial ownership on the underlying assets. I can say that. And in Turkey, actually, Sukuk al-Vakala structure is the mostly used one. Why? Because of easy operational process when compared to other Sukuk structures, such as Sukuk al-Ijara or Sukuk al-Istisna. In a Sukuk al-Vakala, you can easily structure Sukuk and easily operate all of the process. That's why in Turkey, we issued lots of thematic Sukuk issuances, and many of them is Sukuk al-Vakala structure. In this Sukuk structure, the underlying assets stay on the balance sheet. There is only beneficial ownership on this underlying assets. Of course, when we compare it, the traditional sukuk with thematic sukuk, there are some additional steps, such as reporting. We have to publish some fund allocation and impact reports, and there is a verification, certification. The process is very long. And this is also shortly, I can say that.
There's one question from Aisha. How do you price thematic sukuks and stay competitive?
How can we price thematic sukuk? Actually, in international market, of course, we take into account thematic sukuk, international thematic sukuk issuances, and also CDS of countries is very important benchmark in order to fix a pricing level. And of course, US Treasuries treasury bonds pricing levels are very important. But as I mentioned, we can observe pricing advantage in thematic sukuk issuances, but we price it like a traditional sukuk, but with the advantage, approximately 50 basis points advantage, we can price thematic sukuk issuances in the market, in international side. But in local side, actually, we couldn't see any pricing advantage.
So we are almost 30 minutes now, actually. So is there any key takeaways that the audience should be taking into consideration, and what would be next that we would expect in the thematic sukuk issuance? Would there be AI? Would there be involved of blockchains or etc.?
In it, okay. Actually, as I mentioned, there's a huge appetite for thematic sukuk issuances, sustainability link sukuk or financing options in many countries and all over the world. I can say that companies, Islamic banks, and many fund managers need to establish sustainability committees within their companies, and we need to set some sustainable strategy. These are very important because if you take this topic, sustainability issue, on the top management, you can spread this knowledge to other employees. That's why sustainable strategies, sustainable finance departments, and establishing sustainable finance department, establishing sustainability committees, these are very important because, you know, there are lots of reporting mandatory in countries. And also, when we look at Turkey, we have to report our sustainability reportings of the banks every year, and it's a must for all of us. That's why if we want to access the ESG focus funds, we need to change our working mechanism firstly, and need to publish and some documentation process within their companies. And of course, as an investor, or in terms of investors' perspective, we need some incentives to make some awareness in the market.
All right, there's one more question. What will you advise Islamic finance experts seeking to specialize in value-based or thematic sukuk or finance?
Could you please again, but because your voice.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, now.
All right, can you hear me? Okay,
Yes,
so the question is, what will you advise Islamic finance expert seeking to specialize in value-based or thematic sukuk or finance?
Okay, Islamic finance expert. Okay.
You get the question?
Actually, this market is growing day by day, and there are lots of new regulations in the market. That's why I'm trying to follow all of them, but unfortunately, this is very important to catch up all of the developments. But I can say that practicing thematic or sustainability link or any other thematic financing in the market is very important to understand the working mechanism of the system. As an Islamic finance expert, firstly, we need to understand all of the regulations, all of the policymakers' announcements, because there are lots of regulations and also communiques in many countries. Every year there is a COP meetings, and many countries make lots of commitments regarding reaching the sustainable development goals. But in order to understand the working mechanism, you need to read all of the documentation process and also practice in the market. Yes, it's a very complex structure. We are also learning every day with new regulations. But of course, all of the regulations are trying to be finalized in one regulation in the market. I can say that. And please follow up all of the regulations. But of course, there is a huge information in the market. But getting the right information from the right contact and right websites is very important.
I think we are almost to the end, but what I can conclude from all the insights that you have shared today with us is
I think the voice is.
with Islamic capital markets.
Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but I'm sure you cannot hear me.
Okay. If you have any question,
all right, can you hear me now?
All
right.
If you have any question, you can touch in with me because I have another meeting.
All right. I think we have read most of the questions. So I think we will conclude the session today, where like I mentioned now, and you have shared a lot today with us, that the Matrix Sukuk can be a powerful tool to integrate sustainability with Islamic capital markets. It can offer a pathway to social, ethical investment, resilience, and sustainable development. So, by leveraging on Islamic finance principles, it aligns with financial innovation, with global sustainability, and positioning Islamic finance and Islamic capital market as leaders in responsible investing. So before we do end our session, Sister Isma, so what is your last words to all? If we have in the audience policymakers, we have regulators, we have investors, what is your last shout out to everyone here about thematic support, the sustainability goal that we need to achieve together?
Okay. We need to come together actually to support ourselves because there's a one word and we are one. That's why all of the, as I mentioned, policymakers, investors, Islamic banks, fund managers, we have to come together and support ourselves between ourselves by establishing policies, incentives, and also some working mechanism, working groups with our committees. That's why this is very important issue. And I can observe that Islamic finance has been offering much more of what ESG sector was for many years. We can say that Islamic finance is has a richer, robust set of values rather than ESG principles actually. That's why in Islamic finance we need to establish a new words by supporting ourselves.
Inshallah. So with that, I hope whatever key intakes that we have today, we as Islamic finance players, regulators, policymakers, even the smallest person that can actually contribute to the development of Islamic market,
There is is a voice problem.
It's not for the membership.
There is a voice problem. Do you hear me?
Wait a second. Yes, I
Yeah,
can hear
there's a voice problem.
you.
Okay, okay.
Okay, all right. My apologies. So with that, I hope the session was very beneficial to everyone here in LinkedIn and the online session. And please stay tuned in the Islamic Finance Chambers for more interesting topic to be discussed. And hopefully everyone stay safe and Ramadan Mubarak.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Miss Isma, for the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wishing you a blessed Ramadan and early Eid Mubarak. Maybe continue working towards a more sustainable and resilient future together. Thank you.
Ameen, inshallah. Okay, with that, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Thank you.